I have here 450 grams of baker's flour. Now to that, I'm adding 2 teaspoons of salt. You can add a bit less if you prefer. And I'm adding 2 heaped teaspoons of dried instant yeast. And I'm just going to combine and mix all these together so they're all beautifully incorporated. And then to this dry mix, I'm going to add in 360 grams of warm water. And then we're going to mix these together. Now at first you think there's way too much water. Then you're going to think there's way too much flour. But you've got to keep working it. It will combine into a real shaggy ball. Now, being a tactile girl towards the end, I love to get my hands in there, and I'm just going to combine it all and just make sure there's no little lumps of flour left. Just giving it a quick mix and kind of shaping it into a bit of a shaggy ball, as I've mentioned. Just about there. There we go, that's exactly what I'm looking for, that shaggy ball. Now there's 2 things we can do from here. We're going to cover that bowl, and once we've covered it, we can either leave it to double in size at room temperature, which takes a couple of hours, or we can pop it in the fridge for about 8 hours to let it have a slow rise. Sometimes I make this mix at night, and other times I will do that during the day. So here we go, it's now doubled in size. Have a little look, it's still looking pretty rough on the top, but that's fine. Little air bubbles in there, which is great. But you can see it's definitely doubled in size. So what I'm now going to do with floured fingers is to just loosen the bread mixture from the sides of my bowl. And then we're going to start stretching and folding. So I'm grabbing one edge of the mix, pulling it up and bringing it over to the other side and just tucking it down. Now notice the texture at this stage, stringy, etc. So pulling and down. And then I'm going to rotate the bowl again 90 degrees each time. And I'm going to do this anywhere from 10 to 15 turns until I have a kind of smooth-ish ball. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is a quick artisan loaf, which is really delicious. But just using flour to stop the dough from sticking. And turning, stretching and folding. See it's starting to tighten up, and notice the actual structure of the bread now, very different from how we started. And what we're aiming to do is to kind of form it into a nice tight kind of ball. So that's our objective, just turning it until we have that nicely shaped tight ball. So I'm nearly there actually with this one. Right, so that's fine. I'm happy with that. I can see it's holding its shape nicely. And using my floured hands again, I'm just going to tip that ball out onto the bench. And the side that is on the top, when I tip it out, I want that to be on the bottom. So grabbing that dough and making sure that the top is now on the bottom. So flipping it over. There we go. Perfect. Right, so now what I want to do is just tighten up this ball a little bit. I don't need it to be ultra smooth. This is a quick artisan loaf which is delicious, and this is like an everyday one that you can be making. So I'm dragging it on the bench, and that process is going to tighten up the skin and also make sure any openings on the bottom are all nicely closed up. We don't want any air to escape. So just using my hands to pinch it underneath and just stretching it across until I get the feel that this is a nice tight kind of ball. You don't need to do this many times. Now at this stage in my oven, I have got a cast iron pot. My oven is turned on to 230 degrees fan force. That pot's been in there from the beginning of when I started this process. Actually for about half an hour, not right at the beginning. So it's been in there for about half an hour, so it's really hot. So still stretching. That's just about there now, happy with that. Right, so I'm going to lift that dough onto a piece of baking paper. And then I'm just going to let that relax and sit for about 10 minutes. And I need to cover that so it doesn't dry out. Putting a bit of flour on top first. And then I'm going to get my old dirty bowl that I've used from the beginning and just invert that over the top. Let that sit for 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, the dough is relaxed a little bit. It's looking great. I'm going to take my lame. You can take a sharp knife. You want a thin knife, something really nice and thin, and you can do whatever shape you want. Across, I'm just going to give a single slit. And you want to be making sure you go pretty deep. Nice deep cut. If you haven't gone deep enough at the first one, just go in again. We're not after perfection here, guys. So there I have my really hot cast iron pot that's been preheating in the oven, and I'm now going to pick up the paper and drop it in. Be careful, it's super hot. That hot lid's going back on. And then this is going to go into the oven for half an hour at 230 degrees. So now after half an hour, the pot's come out and you can see the bread is puffed up. It's looking absolutely beautiful, but we're going to pop it back in the oven for a further 10 minutes at 230 degrees for it to get nice and brown.